Welcome to another episode of the Devil's Rest Book Club, where we dive into the details of Christopher Rocchio's Sun Eater universe. I am your hunchbacked, heterochromic intus host, Cameron, and grabbing his lapel, this wandering palatine who is with me every week, Drew. Drew, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. This week we're going to be covering chapters 37 through 40. It's an extra chapter this week. The first book of series, Empire of Silence. We thought it was appropriate. Last chapter is short and leaves us on a good spot, so we thought it was worth it to keep it all in one spot.
So now Hadrian, it seems like this arc has just begun, but at the same time, a lot more action is happening. So what happened last episode that is noteworthy before we jump into the stuff that happened?
So last episode, we got some introductions to kind of like a lot of new characters, a little bit overwhelming, actually. We had Hadrian joining Colosso for the first time after the previous episode, and he meets primarily a couple of characters. First, and probably most important, is Switch, who he's training. We get another couple of people. Another highlight is Gen. There's this conflict between them, and Polino as well, who's like this sort of old veteran guy who has been in Colosso for quite a long time. And at the end of last episode, they are actually thrust into a combat engagement versus 5 gladiators who are in the middle of a cull session, essentially, to wipe out the entire field of myrmidons. They end up besting the gladiators and getting a large bonus for the display. That sort of finishing with Hadrian having this dramatic moment where he throws the shield and they knock them over and they stun them all and they end up winning, which is not supposed to happen, but very dramatic, very cool sequence. It's a good experience to see combat for the first real time like this, but also a major win for Hadrian and his myrmidons. So that's where we left off.
So this new Hadrian is a victorious one,
yes.
And he and his comrades begin chapter 37, Might Never Die, by celebrating this victory. So Hadrian has a plan. He has a direction forward in his life. He's taking the path that old Crow has laid out for him, right? He is mentioning, or he is saving his money. He's being in Colosso. He's being a myrmidon with the hopes that he will either be able to purchase a ship or purchase a way off planet in the future. Like, he has a direction where he did not before. And in doing so, as part of it, he's not planning on squandering that money buying alcohol. He's not spending a single dime until he can put money towards a ship. But it didn't matter because everybody else who got this 50 Hurasam bonus from the last episode is drinking like there's no tomorrow, and he still sufficiently got drunk enough, right? Like, they stay out all night. It sounds like a very European situation to me. The U.S. doesn't do this. Some people do this in the U.S. In Texas, bars close at 2. So
yeah.
You go home at 2, and maybe you go to somebody's house if you're really wanting to drink.
I will also say, it seems like even though he's being conservative here and trying to save his money, it gives me the impression that he's actually having a good time, which is interesting for Hadrian. We've seen Hadrian sulk and be mad and stuff like that, but it seems like he's actually a part of the party, which is different.
Not the brooding
right
actor in the corner. Yeah. Of course. It is strange to see that from him. It's growth.
Mm-hmm.
But they stay out literally all night until the sun rises. I get this vision mainly because, I don't know, my personal experience, the only times that I've experienced nights like this where you literally stay out all night until the next morning. Like, you're wandering the streets, you're having a glass of wine over here, you've drinking too much, for sure. You probably spent too much money on alcohol. This sounds like it was a night to remember. And he mentions the fact that, a lot of people didn't remember that night, but it will always stand out in my memory as one of the greatest nights, which is probably smart too, because makes you wonder if he has a better processing
of alcohol.
Yeah, if he processes alcohol better because of his genetics. That's
I actually didn't think about that. Yeah,
that probably is part of it. And the other part of it is he probably didn't drink as much because he's not spending all the money, which is twofold good. But they, are dwelling on their strength, the youth that they have, and the feeling of immortality that they got at the end of the match. They did spend some time mourning the people that had fallen. I think it was 20 that went in, and ultimately 12 came out.
Yeah,
if I
something
remember
like that.
Correctly.
Yeah.
So the 8 people that they lost, they mourn temporarily. And I wanted to read a part from page 245, where he says, "We raised a glass to our dead and several to ourselves, And though many of us said we wished we were dead the next day, not a one of us meant it. Headaches be damned, for they are fleeting, and we felt we might never die. Yeah,
Oh.
super celebratory that evokes just the feeling of
There's the euphoria of victory is kind of
Oh, yeah.
the feeling, and it's great. There's this excitement and rush that comes from it that he's describing that I think is sort of binds people together into a group almost. So it's sort of like they're building through their celebration and victory, but also through their having survived and the sacrifice of others and stuff. It's like this camaraderie that's forming between everybody.
And not only that, like the camaraderie of this moment too, right?
Yeah.
Like, of course, there's a camaraderie you gain of being able to trust people at your back in a life or death situation. But the highest moments that you have with those people are these times that are on the streets, not the ones in the
Yes,
arena.
the after the rush of having survived the thing.
Dude, just imagine what that's like. I can't, but just imagine, I've celebrated work stuff, friend stuff, athletic achievements, whatever it may be. None of them would compare to surviving Colosso. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
The odds are so stacked against you. It's insane.
Yeah. No, I agree. Any comparisons I would make to anything that I've experienced would be very small and dissimilar just because of the stakes. Like I can't imagine everything literally being on the line and coming out the other side. I just can't even imagine what that's like. It's got to be really surreal, actually.
So we come to find out too that this is just the first of many victories. So
yes,
what we're seeing here is abnormal, and they kind of do gain a sense of immortality or some immortality because myrmidons are not supposed to perform as well as they are. They gain a reputation among the people of being very good at their job, and they have many, many, many more victories.
I want to point out here that this moment, Rocchio gained a lot of credibility for me because the moment that I'm just pointing out is we have specific battle that happens, we get celebration, and then we don't spend 7 more chapters doing battles in Colosso, and I really mean this. He does one, he shows the victory, we see the cost of it, and then he does a little bit of a time jump explanation from the narrator's perspective to give us broader context without having to show us everything. I appreciated that so much because when I started reading this book, I was really wanting the grand scale of things. And I was really actually a little concerned once we got to Colosso that the rest of the book was going to be Colosso. I really was worried that was going to happen. Readers that enjoy a book like Red Rising, for example, can identify with something like this where you have big expectations, something starts to happen, and then you spend a lot of time doing a thing. Maybe you feel like, I really kind of wish that we would have moved to something further on. But Rocchio, he does it very well. He gives you just enough to see the thing and to know what it's like, but then he doesn't play the same note over and over again, which I was just like super impressed with when I read the section.
It's almost just an introduction. Like that sequence is just an introduction to the people that were special to Hadrian at that moment.
Yes.
And then it's all about those people and the interactions they have as Hadrian moves towards his goal of getting off planet.
Yeah. Time jumps are my favorite narrative device. I think that they're really underutilized. Rocchio uses it very well, and I think this is a good indication of him doing that.
He is walking with this group and is passing the cafe that he had met Old Crow at when he was running away from the prefects on the street. So he's reminiscing and also thinking about of how different of a person he is. Younger, street-bound Hadrian versus the myrmidon that he has become, training, and being as successful as he is. At this cafe, they stop and presumably have drinks or just to talk. He's leaning on the rail of this cafe where he had met with Old Crow and had hid for a moment, and is discussing with Polino and a new character that we meet for the first time, his lover Alara, about potentially joining him and Switch on a financial venture of procuring a loan for a ship, essentially.
So clever of Rocchio to have this conversation happening here.
Yeah.
I completely missed this on my first read. I don't know how I skipped over this. I don't remember Old Crow on my first read. He stuck out a lot to me during the last arc. And this is, Rocchio calling back to that about he's literally doing what Old Crow said, right? I mean, it was very prophetic. of join this thing. It gives you opportunity, look up towards the stars, still like where are you going is who you are. And that's really shaped Hadrian in the previous months and the fights that he's describing, the fact that they're gaining reputation, that there's a future possible for him now because of that conversation. I just really appreciate that it's not just a conversation that happens in the past, but it's happening here physically to call attention to the fact that we should be making that connection as a reader. It's just good writing, in my opinion. It's great.
Polino, as a reminder for those who don't remember from last episode, is this grizzled veteran myrmidon who apparently was a legionnaire in the Emperor's Legion. Previously, he's got one eye, and he was the guy that everybody was listening to when shit hit the fan in Colosso in that last engagement. So this situation is not new to him, because we come to find out that Polino and Alara have been doing this for years. So this isn't their first contract that they've signed. It sounds like the contracts work, if you're not a criminal, the contracts work every year. You can re-up and re-sign. Polino has done this 5 years, and Alara has done it for 3. So these people are especially good at not dying in Colosso, because you can imagine that the vast majority of people don't make it to the 1 year mark. These people are tripling or quintupling at that time period.
It's crazy.
Something I didn't realize last time going through this too is that Polino not only is a veteran in that myrmidon sense, but also killed 40 of the Pale in the Emperor's Legion, right?
Yeah.
And so he's like, to him, this is all fun and games to some extent, because he's faced the Pale and killed 40 of them.
Yeah.
I knew he was a soldier. I didn't realize he was that good of a soldier.
Yeah. No, it's I don't know why I didn't make this connection last time around as well, but I agree. Emphasizes, frankly, Polino being this skilled is one thing, but this is a demonstration of just like, what would it mean for a person to be able to kill 40 Pale? It mean that they would walk through Colosso and kill everyone for years, or they would fight everyone and win for years when everyone else gets mowed down. Like, that's the kind of person that it takes to be able to actually fight in the wars against the Cielcin. And you have to be really formidable person. And so it's sort of using the reputation that we had established with Polino in the last episode to really build upon that with this remark about his veteran status in this war. They sort of lean on each other as like, it's like, oh, the Pale must be really serious, and also Polino must be really serious too.
Yeah.
Really cool.
He's definitely worth listening to in combat engagements.
Yeah.
Right?
He's not a pretender. He's legit.
It's the real deal.
It's the real deal.
So Hadrian knows this, though, and is buttering him up and appealing to his, didn't you kill 40? Yeah, I killed 40 of the, like getting him riled up, getting him going. Saying, and he's being really smart from a business standpoint, trying to get him hooked on this idea.
Do you think he killed 40, or do you think that's a war story where like it's slightly exaggerated, like when guys go hunting and they say that
I bet he killed 37.
Yeah.
I bet he killed 30. You round up to the next multiple.
Yeah.
So 40 seems too even. Anywhere from 36 to 40 seems reasonable.
I've killed 0, so it's still impressive.
Yeah.
But I just think it's funny.
Also, it says he killed 40 Pale. It didn't say he'd do it in single combat or by himself, right? Like, this is presumably with the rest of the Legion around him. But either way, he is obviously faced more combat, and in life or death situations, I was watching this thing with Alex. Are you familiar with Alex Honnold? He's the free solo guy.
I've heard that. I don't recall it off the top of my head, but it's bouncing off my...
If you want a stressful experience watching a movie, which not a lot of people do, I think you should. It's an incredible movie. It might be the most incredible feat that I've seen filmed ever. And he's about to do this crazy thing again. This guy, Alex Honnold, is the best climber in the world. Like, the best.
Oh, is he one of these
He's the guy
climbers?
who soloed with... Free soloing is what they call it. He climbed El Cap at Yosemite with no rope, and they got it on film. And he's about to do a live climb on Netflix of Taipei 101, which is a skyscraper. It's one of the biggest skyscrapers in the world. He's about to do that live on Netflix with no ropes.
That's crazy.
But he has been climbing for so long and has such experience. Like, they'd measured his brain, like his brain activity as it relates to the stimulus of like fight or flight scenario type stuff. And he's able to keep more calm.
Yep.
Polino is that. If you are in engagements with the Pale this often, and not to mention 5 years of fighting as a myrmidon on the handicapped side of the gladiators, this guy's cool as a cucumber when shit hits the fan, which is now we see why everybody was pointing to him, because he probably has been around the longest out of anybody there. And Alara, for her credit too, is there for 3 years, right? That's a long time too. So Hadrian is buttering Polino up with the intention of trying to get him to go in on this starship. I'm like, well, we're thinking of getting a used starship, appealing to the knowledge that Polino has to see if he can convince both of them to come in, because that's doubling their potential funds, even more if they go for all of the funds that they have saved up, right?
Yep. Assuming they haven't spent it all on alcohol. They've been saving it.
That's right. Hadrian remarks the fact, he never takes off his castometer, right? His cast radar, like his genetic radar, he has on him all the time. So he remarks about the fact that Polino's got to have some patrician blood in previous generations, because for having fought in the emperor's service for 40 years, he doesn't look as old as a plebeian would be. So maybe he does. But that also might be giving Polino a leg up in comparison to other people that are just coming in off the street. He does remark, though, that, and we know that the contract for Hadrian is, 6,500 or 6,000 Herasoms after a year. So if you do that times 5, that's only 50K, and that's assuming that you saved every single penny that you owned or that you got. The scale may go up. I don't know how it works or whatever, but like the lowballing end of it, Polino only has 30, which means he probably has 15 if he saved that much. And Alara has, 18 or whatever it is at most.
Yeah.
So the total amount that they could probably get is around the realms of 50, 60,000 Herasoms for a starship. It doesn't seem like a lot. I don't know what the value of a Herasom is, but like that's a car, right?
Yeah.
These are
Spaceships.
intergalactic starships.
Yep.
And Polino mentions the fact that like even with all the money that they have saved, even with whatever they get to save, I don't know if it'll be that much. He says a decent ship is worth the price of a township.
Yeah.
But because he's got him on the hook, he starts making recommendations. Don't buy anything with these warp drives, like they're no good and all this different stuff. And so Hadrian knows at this point, it's like, okay, I've got him interested.
Yeah. As soon as they start bantering back and giving advice, you've got your hooks in it. Now he's involved in he would just let it go if you weren't interested.
But in that moment when Polino says that the price of a township is the price of a vehicle, he remembers and thinks about the ring that's hanging around his neck. And he's like, oh, I have something that's worth the price of a township. And the chapter ends in a really nice way. We rarely get this in a chapter where Hadrian's just having a good time with pals and feeling like one of the guys, right? That's just the end of the chapter. You don't get a lot of that joy throughout the series, unfortunately.
It's this really wholesome thing. Perhaps for the first time, I knew what it was to be among friends and was content. It's so interesting because Hadrian has never belonged, really.
He's never had friends.
No,
Gibson was his only friend.
But Gibson too is like a mentor. It's like you need people,
no peers,
right? That's right. That's the right word for it. Is you need peers. You need people on your level. If there's someone below you, you're their mentor. If they're above you, then they're your mentor. You need peers. That's exactly right. And so he's sort of finding community for the first time in this like very unlikely place, in this like death cage thing where he's just gonna fight to the death and stuff. It's interesting that this is where our character finds home. It's
in
cool
the polar opposite from what you would have thought. And after chapter 6. That being said, I don't think Hadrian sees anybody as a peer. Like it's above or below, and everybody that he's hanging out with right now is below him. Right? He's still probably calling them Sarah and all this different stuff. Right? He just can't
undo it.
Be that self-aware. It's so ingrained in him being a Palatine.
Yeah.
That's where he ends his chapter. And we begin chapter 38, Blood Like Wax. Hadrian then lets us in on the future. And this is the point that Rocchio does a really good job of just saying that, okay, we've moved on from I'm not going to send you on gladiator fights for the next 500 pages or whatever it is. Mentioning the fact that Hadrian never loses a round in Colosso, and he didn't have to kill anybody in doing so either. Because the suits, we know, based on that last episode, the suits sort of seize up and protect the gladiators and gladiatrixes from dying. He didn't have to kill anybody in his career as a myrmidon. I think that kind of points to him being different than, right?
Yeah.
This is a moment of pride for him, the fact that he went through, I think he was contracted for 65 engagements or something like that. And he gets close to the end there in doing so, like 50 plus engagements. He never lost and he never killed anybody. So he's living to his values while also getting to show how good he is with the sword.
It also stood out to me that it's mentioned that he doesn't just have group engagements. He has a lot of single combat engagements, and like a lot of them, even against
27 or something like that. Yeah.
It's even more than that. It's I think it says 57 group combats and almost as many single combats. It's a gigantic number is what it says.
Oh, wow.
It's craziness. That's like fighting all the time. What's interesting is he starts to develop a reputation for when he fights other myrmidons in single combat, not killing them. So like he disarms.
Well, it's not just myrmidons he's fighting either, right? It's not just myrmidons. He's also fighting gladiators.
Right. But
combat.
like, so like if it's myrmidon and the myrmidon though, he could actually kill them, but he just disarms them. And so he develops this like sort of wholesome reputation as a fighter in Colosso. So like the crowd digs it actually. He's like this like noble knight myrmidon guy. He's just walking in and just dueling everyone and beating them and stuff. It's cool.
I didn't think about this until right now. Have you seen Game of Thrones?
Yes.
He reminds me of the Knight of the Roses, Loras Tyrell, who is very like, who fought with the mountain. I think he beats the mountain in a joust and then, so gallant. Like he's this larger than life dreamboat-esque gallant swordsman, which you don't see very often, I imagine, in this blood sport-esque. I mean, the fact that we don't know of any, I'm sure they may have existed, probably not. I don't know. Any from Roman times that were like this. We are more closely aligned with people like Wesley from The Princess Bride. Or Inigo Montoya or Zorro or like these sort of larger than life duelists that very melodramatic, right? Like he's becoming a character in a Eudorian opera, like that his mother would
make. In Colosso, which is interesting.
But in Colosso.
Yeah. I also think it's interesting that it sort of mentions that he is pretty safe in single combat. Like he's really good at it. So it's emphasized here, we have all this training that he endures throughout his life, but he's actually good at the dueling part. So like the thing at the start of the book where they're specifically talking about how dueling is important for palantines to do well, this shows he's actually really good at it. He's best in gladiators at it with the massive disadvantage. So he's doing really well, but he also makes it clear the group stuff is like super not safe. It's really, really dangerous because there's so little control. He can walk into a one-on-one combat and pretty much best everyone just through skill. But if you walk into a group engagement and there is just 10 gladiators with lasers, you're just probably dead. There's almost nothing you can do about an engagement like that. This is very different. I think it actually says, go ahead.
The variables shift too, right? We know that the geography of the stadium can shift at a moment's notice. So with these group engagements, there's way more variables than Hadrian and somebody he is dueling with the sword where he knows he's better.
Yep. I think it actually mentions that they lose some folks, but there's even one group engagement where him and Switch are the only people that make it out of the group engagement. Super interesting that we get this kind of development that happens a little bit off screen for Rakia. That's really disciplined writing, actually, because that gives us a sort of drip-fed moment about Hadrian and Switch. Like you can almost see the thing playing out in your head where they're fighting to the last, but it's really Hadrian protecting Switch. If we're being real, that's had to be. So we're getting this information without seeing it. So it's just doing a lot of legwork very quickly.
And on that note, somebody we didn't spend a lot of time with, but was loud in the first engagement. His name was Banks. He was the guy that was coming up behind the gladiatrix on their initial attempt at trying to take over and use strategy to beat the gladiators. He dies in Colosso. And I actually like the fact that like we hear him in Colosso once and then he just dies in some engagement that we never hear about, because that's reality, right? Like that's his impact on the story, was just this one thing and then he dies, and that's realistic.
Yep.
I don't need to hear about him forever.
Yep.
Kiri, also in the same vein, is this sort of nice motherly figure to Switch. And at some point she realizes, shit, this is scary. I'd rather not keep going. And so she hangs up her gloves at some point.
She leaves.
Like, I'm done. She leaves. So presumably her contract came up, she lived, and now she moves
walked
on in
away.
life.
Smart
Never
person.
hear from her again.
Yeah. And maybe achieved the goal that she was there for, right? Like got what they would and just like did my risk, got my reward, I'm out, right? Again, really interesting disciplined writing. It's this emphasis on, not every character introduced has to be part of the permanent cast now or something like that. People come and go. We see people once or twice or for a year in our life, and then they step out of our story. And that's what happens to these characters. It's good writing by Rocchio.
He also mentions the fact that in one of the, the main event is typically when these group actions happen, and if he's in a group action, it's probably the main event. And if it's a single combat thing, he's probably earlier on the fight card. Similar to the thing that we had seen previously, not only with this engagement, but also in Chapter 6 when we were hearing about the Ashdark and all that stuff. Apparently they make the Umand fight with various beasts as part of their sport. And the Umand are predators, we come to find out. And 3 of them end up fighting a panther one time that Hadrian talks about. And he says it's sort of offsetting and things like that. The panther ends up killing one of the Umand.
I couldn't figure out in that section if it was saying the Umand were predators or
I think the Umand are predators.
Or the Umand detected that the panthers were predators and therefore they defended themselves. Because I thought the same thing. I was like, oh, that's interesting. Let's see.
Oh, you're right. You're totally right.
That's what it was.
It is.
I thought the same thing when I read it.
The Umand learn that. Okay, that changes it. Okay, another instance of being able to identify a predator v prey of something very quickly and alien to you, right? Because they've never seen a panther before.
But they recognize it, so they're
quickly. So this is another point in the Umand are more sentient than we're giving them credit for, because they went from being aggressive to defensive, and the one that was aggressive dies, right?
Yeah, and Hadrian never fights one because my understanding is the way that the myrmidons are equipped, a Umand could actually kill a human. And they wouldn't 100%. Allow a Xeno to be on display killing a human being in Colosso, and therefore the only time an Umand would be fighting in Colosso against the person would be a gladiator, where they had no chance of winning or something like that. So it would have to be like, we've got this situation where we're just slaughtering these things with modern technology. Because if we go in there with rusty swords, the Umand probably win. It's interesting.
Yeah, you don't even want to... Like, on the off chance that a gladiator... I mean, the gladiators can lose to a myrmidon. Who's to say that a gladiator couldn't lose to an Umand either?
Who knows?
Right?
Maybe
you don't want to risk it.
Maybe they would tip the odds way further or something like that, but they certainly wouldn't do it with a myrmidon. It's interesting that they're okay with an upset for the myrmidons, but they won't tolerate an upset from a Xeno, right?
I think here's an interesting question on that. Is it because Hadrian is Palatine and they can tell?
Interesting. I don't know, because I feel like if they could tell, they probably would shut it down, because I don't know that they would want a Palatine displayed as a myrmidon. They'd probably have a problem with that, because it's almost lowers the class in a way. I don't know. It's an interesting question.
Or there's a few things, right? Everybody loves an underdog and an underdog story. So if the whole point of this whole thing is bred in circuses, sometime the myrmidons have to win. If the gladiators kill them every time and the gladiators are safe every time, then there's no sport. It's just you're going to watch a ritual slaughter every time.
I will say too, I think it implies a little bit that they are okay with upsets, that Polino is still here for this long, right? Because like, if they truly didn't want the Myrmidons to win, then they wouldn't allow people like Polino to exist, where they can continually re-up and they would get rid of him somehow. But it seems like they're okay with characters developing and being good fighters as long as the stakes are high and gladiators win most of the time or something like that.
Which we imagine they do win most of the time.
Of course, yeah.
To your point, Polino's he's been here 5 years. He's got to be well known, right?
Yeah,
people
probably
have to know who he is.
Yeah, especially now.
Probably not as much as Hadrian, because Hadrian is
larger than life.
The writer of the story, and 2, he's just Zorro. He's just trying to beat everybody.
Space Zorro.
Yeah, exactly.
Antonio Banderas as Hadrian Marlowe.
Yes, would work. 10 out of 10 would work. But after one of these engagements, he is in the dining hall where the myrmidon eat. At this point in the story, 57 of his contracted 65 combat engagements had happened. Okay, so I think here's the math. I think 27, now that I'm looking at it, 27 of the engagements are single combat, and the however many that is, 30 group engagements, 27, because I think it specifically says that he was 27-0 later, talking about when he was fighting the gladiatrix specifically. So 30 group engagements, 27 single combat. So that's almost 50-50.
It says nearly a year in the Colosso after 57 of my contracted group engagements and nearly as many non-lethal single combats.
Okay, so let me see. This might be a difference between the two.
Actually, if it is a difference, then catch it.
What page is that on?
I'm on 249.
Okay, 249. Okay. Yeah, you're right. 57 of my contracted group. That's crazy.
It's insanity.
That's crazy.
It's literally insane, right? I mean,
57 combat engagements is crazy.
Almost as many single combats. Like, just think about how frequently he is fighting, right?
Yeah.
Like, because if we're thinking about that, I mean, that's literally all the time he is in death's sight, like constantly.
You know what it probably is? He says many non-lethal single combats. This is probably just a show in advance of the main event. If we're thinking that these group combat engagements are life and death and the main event at these Colosso experiences, then maybe he gets additional money for these non-lethal engagements, but these aren't contracted.
Yeah,
there's an understanding of like, you're not going to die in this if you go on ahead. Maybe you get some more cash on the side or something like that.
Well, I think that also the non-lethal may just be emphasizing the fact that he never killed anybody in single combat, like he said earlier. That's a good question, though. But like, I wonder, that is a good question because he's contracted for the group ones. Maybe it is supplementary income or something like that if you do the single comp. I didn't actually think about that, but they're having him fighting for things he's not contracted for. Whether that's voluntary or not is not on the page.
Because why would you say non-lethal single combats versus single combats, right?
I think just because he didn't kill anyone. I don't know, actually. It's a good point. Maybe
there is some sort of distinction between the contracted group engagements and whatever he's fighting in, whether or not they are lethal. But maybe he's getting more money than we think. Because initially just seeing 6,000 Hurasams or whatever. Why would you join an additional combat unless there is financial incentive for you to do it?
Well, I mean, maybe they're just forcing him to do it anyway. Theoretically.
It could be.
Yeah. Although
he's not a slave, right? Like he signed up.
That's correct. You're accurate. Yeah, that's accurate. Interesting point. Maybe we'll have to ask Christopher at some point.
That's, let's make that is a note for us in the future to understand. That's a really nitpicky,
super obscure question, but it would be interesting.
I am interested.
Yeah, I am curious about it.
But at this point in the story, he has had 57 out of 65 group combat engagements that have occurred. And he remarks at the fact that this room where he eats with the rest of the myrmidons smells of vat-grown meat. Ugh, vat-grown meat rearing its ugly head again.
Yeah.
And sweat, and how it felt more like home than Devil's Rest ever did. Partially probably for being known and having peers, or the closest thing he's had to peers around him in comparison to servants in this dry, sanitized sort of place. He's not set apart. He is one of the dudes. At that time, a legion troop carrier named the Obdurate, which means stubborn in wrongdoing or set in strong feelings, drops off some federati who want out of the fighting and choose to join the myrmidons. A federati is the plural form of federatus, is a mercenary in the lexicon in the back of the book. And in Latin it means treaty-bound ally. So a fedus, F-O-E-D-U-S, is a treaty. So somebody who is fighting under a treaty as an ally is a federatus.
Interesting. Okay.
So these people are not legion in the strictest sense. They are mercenaries that have contracted with the legion. Like, think Blackwater, right? Like somebody who's contracting with the U.S. military or intelligence to get something done. Maybe not as like special forces-y, but just more boots on the ground. Hadrian overhears one of them named Kogan discussing victories against the Pale and how they took like hundreds of Cielcin as hostages or prisoners of war. At this point, Switch introduces Hadrian to Kogan, who is one of these former Federati, who fought in the Battle of Woden. Now, keeping with the theme, here's the thing, like, I'm having to dig really deep for some of these planet names. This one makes a lot of sense. Woden is the ancient Germanic or Saxon name for the god that we in English commonly call Odin, so the father of Thor. There's a common misconception that Odin, being Thor's father, is an older god, like has been around longer in the pantheon, but actually Odin is a younger god from the perspective of doesn't show up in the tradition until way after Thor does. So Thor's been around way longer than Odin or Woden is, just as a fun fact.
Yeah.
But Woden is keeping with this theme of like other cultures' gods get named planets.
Yeah. I wanted to read this section quickly because there's in the previous act, we had the restarting of the wonder of Hadrian, the wanting to do something different, the wanting to get out in the stars. And I think this section actually starts the wonder for the Cielcin again, because that's sort of not part of the picture again for Hadrian until this moment. And there's this section as Kogan is talking, and he starts talking about the demons being taken hostage. Right? Said, I stopped listening. Cielcin hostages. The thought stirred a long dead piece of me. Scattered words of their language played in my ears. Grubbing as I had in the streets, I had forgotten the war. Always it had seemed so remote, so distant. The monsters had seemed painted at the fringes of the map. They snaked their way closer now, worming their way out of the dark. It's this moment where we're starting to feel that it's no longer distant thunder, right?
Yeah.
Like this is where I think the story really starts to creep in a little bit more. You know, we've got first arc, second arc, third arc, and now the author is a little bit like calling attention, like, hey, we are now going to start doing a little bit more with the Cielcin. So we've had Hadrian sort of coming of age arc. We've gotten the sort of adventurous pieces back, and now we've inserted Cielcin back. The language starts coming back to him. Maybe the curiosity starts to come back to him in this moment as well. And he's like listening to this conversation all of a sudden. He's like reminder, there's more to Hadrian than just adventure. These things in particular interest Hadrian. So very excited. Very exciting.
Yeah. That's a really good point, because now the Cielcin are one person removed. Right?
Yeah, right.
Lino kills 40 of them.
Yep.
And Kogan presumably has fought with the Cielcin too. So whereas these business people in chapter 3 had heard about what happened on Cieclin and have seen videos, we're dealing with soldiers that had been on the front lines and fought them now.
Mm-hmm.
So you're right. This is the closest we've ever been, and they are looming.
Mm-hmm.
Kogan mentions that the Legion had seized or destroyed a Cielcin world ship, and then notes and remarks at the fact that Hadrian is that guy. So he has a reputation that precedes him, where he's beating gladiators, gladiatrixes. Kogan mentions that he heard of Hadrian's duel with Amare, the red-haired gladiatrix. So Hadrian is well known, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not only the people know him, but
him
other
in particular.
In this area, he's already making a name for himself, even in this small part of the
known
galaxy.
As a gladiator named Hade and Borosevo. This prophecy is now fulfilled from the start. So he is well known as Hade.
Yeah, you're right. People in the streets of Borosevo know him as Hade.
Yeah.
That's right. Hadrian tries to prod him a little bit for more information because his interest has been perked up. The Cielcin that were captured at Woden, like hundreds of them were given over to Legion intelligence. But Kogan's old boss, this mercenary guy, Alexei, was kept a few for himself for sport. And this kind of shocks Hadrian because this is the first time he's heard, being a Palatine, this is the first time he's heard of people keeping Cielcin. Kogan sort of like shrugs and scoffs. Maybe it wasn't something that happened on Delos, but Kogan scoffs at the fact, saying that basically people have been keeping Cielcin since day one of the war. And what we know about how they treat the Umand and how they treat all these other Xenos, it wouldn't be too far out of the realm of possibility that Cielcin would be treated as less than it when captured by humans, right? Hadrian sort of changes the subject and asks what company he was in. You know, he says like, oh, were you in the, Cartland company with the Drakes or whatever? And Kogan's like, those bastards, no, never. No, they never fought. They just were in parades. We fought in the front lines. I was part of White Horse Company under Alexei Karelin. I think, and I'm fascinated. We have to whittle down our list of questions to Christopher Rocchio on some of the references. Alexei Karelin sounds way too close for me to Alexander Karelin, who is the greatest Greco-Roman wrestler of all time. He fought for 3 countries, being the Soviet Union, Russian Federation, and then like the unified, I don't know, it was when the Soviet Union fell. This guy was like undefeated, like a 4-time gold medalist, lost to Rulin Gardner in this crazy match. And this guy was like probably the greatest Greco-Roman wrestler that's ever lived. So Alexei is a diminutive form of Alexander. So it makes me think that
Interesting.
it is Karelin. If you go look him up, this guy's like a Russian gorilla.
I think I may
You
have
could
heard of
think
this guy.
Ivan Drago, but wrestling. Like if you look at him, you'd be like, no, I'm not rolling with that guy ever. He's a freak. But I think that's the reference of the name. But that Alexei Karelin is the leader of White Horse Company. And then we sort of get a jump later in time as Hadrian goes to bathe after a sparring session. And we figure out and hear that he's been meeting and like hearing more about Kogan. His ears are perked up. He's trying to get some of this drip-fed information from him about the Cielcin because he wants to find out as much as he possibly can. Hearing about the Battle of Lodin and the legions and what they're like. This is the first time we hear this name, or maybe not the first time we heard it, but the first time we get an explanation of who this person is in the book. Duke Titus Hauptmann is the first strategist of the Legion Centurine. So the galaxy has many arms. Sagittarius arm and the Centaurus arm and the Norma arm are the arms of the galaxy that we hear most about. Titus Hauptmann is the first strategist, which you can imagine is like a high up general of the Centurine arm, the Centaurus arm of the galaxy. The name Titus Hauptmann, Titus was a Roman emperor who was also a general in the Roman legions prior to becoming emperor. And he, as a general, was responsible for taking over Jerusalem in the 1st century and destroying the Second Temple of Solomon. So if you go to Rome today, you can see there's an arch that was built commemorating Titus's time as not only an emperor, but also as a military general, called the Arch of Titus in Rome. During his reign, Emperor Titus oversaw the finishing of the Colosseum, as well as is known for his generosity in the face of natural disasters, particularly Vesuvius erupting in AD 79. The effects that had on the population, he was known as very generous. The last name Hauptmann literally translates to headman in German. And this is it's like captain in German. Like this is like Titus Captain is this guy's name. So yeah. That Hauptmann means literally headman.
That's funny.
So Emperor Headman is the first strategist of the Legion Centurine. I just thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
Hadrian, as he is walking towards the bath, is thinking about his record in single combat.
He's thinking about specifically fighting the gladiatrix Ameri.
Yes.
And it looks like maybe this is where you got this 27 number from. Is that it had been my 27th single combat when he fought this person. And
yes.
So he's saying that
at this time he was 27-0 when he fought her.
Yes.
Yeah, that makes more sense.
Yeah, and so it sounds like this person is unbelievably skilled because she almost bests Hadrian, which is just crazy, right? And he said that in this fight, in actuality, he wins because he sort of games the suit that this person has on by repeatedly striking it in order to mess with the fact that it locks up and messes with her reaction time. He remarks that maybe it's a little scummy, but the whole shtick is scummy where they get to not get hurt and he literally can bleed out and die. So fair is fair, and if I'm being honest, but it's interesting to see that we get a little more detail about this fight. So it sounds like this one stands out amongst the fights that he had. Maybe he could have died in that fight and he ended up skirting out of it. That's pretty crazy.
This makes me think we've watched UFC a little bit together and you've seen some UFC fights. There are some fights where it's so dominant that it's boring.
Yep.
Or strategically, and it's primarily grapplers, right? A grappler will go in. Merab Dvalishvili does this a lot, right? He'll use his wrestling as a way, or did you watch Khamzat Chimaev versus Dricus du Plessis?
I don't know that I saw that one. I did see, I don't know if it was it Islam versus Volk? I don't remember who it was, but he just like took him down and just like held him there or something. Yeah. Sometimes
JDM.
This happens with grapplers against people who don't have good enough grappling to manage it. And it strategically wins, but it sucks and it's boring.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The better example of that is if you go, don't look this up. It's a terrible fight. Don't watch it. Anybody it's a fan of MMA, this is not going to make you want to watch MMA. It was the most dominant thing I've ever seen. It was also the most boring fight I've seen in a long time. Hamza Chimaev versus Dricus du Plessis. He just took him down. Dricus could, like, at the beginning of the round, he took him down, and then he was just punching him from his back, on top of the guy, just punching him, rabbit punching him the entire fight. Like, didn't go for submissions, didn't go for finishes, just punched the guy like a little bit and did a little bit of damage. Took no damage, took 0 damage, but was totally gamesmanship, right? Had won on points. And that's the vision and there was tons of boos, right? You can envision that the way Hadrian fought this match, maybe he was booed or like, it was that sort of vibe. It's like, hey, I just had to do whatever I needed to get out of there because, that was a close one.
I will say, though, it sounds like he gained like some pretty intensely good reputation for beating this person in the first place.
Yes.
So yeah. Like, maybe they're just like, I think I get the sense that this is the biggest upset that he has achieved is this person. This is the person that Kogan mentions when he meets him. So, and that sounds like it's a while ago. If this is 27 and he said almost as many single combats as in the 50s now. So that's like a long time ago and people are still talking about it. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Huh.
As he is walking to this bath complex and pondering how close to death he possibly was against Samurai, he bumps into this tall man wearing darker than black robes. So we find out that the bath complex and the hypogeum is on the prison side of it. So they've got like 2 dorms. They've got a prison dorm and they've got the like freeman dorm or whatever, like the people who signed up on their own. He's walking to the bath complex, which is on the prison side. He bumps into this man from the chantry who is a chanter in the chantry, which is like an average priest. The mention of darker than black, this might be wrong. I think it might be a reference to the Fulajin cloaks from the Guild of Torturers in Book of the New Sun. Rocky has made it sound like he did not read Book of the New Sun until after Empire of Silence is written.
Okay.
So I don't know if this is added in after or whatever. The darker than black makes me Fulajin is a darker than black color in Book of the New Sun, which makes me think it's a reference.
It's interesting. I actually don't. The sequencing of when this section was written may be different because my understanding is that the book was written and sold and then there were edits made. And I believe this section was added in after discussing it with the publisher and the editor. So like the Colosso stuff and some of the stuff on this planet were added as an expansion of the book. He's got this book, The Murdered Son, that's like the original version. That's a smaller book. So maybe he meant that literally once this book was done and like actually submitted and stuff, he read Book of the New Sun. But that's an interesting thing. I don't know anything about Book of the New Sun yet, so that'd be a cool catch if that were true.
It's just the darker than black thing because like that is a big part of Book of the New Sun. Like the Fulajin cloaks that Severian wears as part of the Guild of Torturers are darker than black. There is a color that is darker than black. The darkest black is called Vanta black. If you look it up,
I've seen
it like refracts very, 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 very little light. So it's something like that. This guy's wearing those dark of robes. Initially, because Hadrian bumps into this guy, again, we got to have our blood sensor, our genetic sensor on. This guy must be patrician, right? He's tall, but he sort of throws Hadrian off because he calls Hadrian Sira. Again, like putting Hadrian lower than himself. And of course, Hadrian, the first thing he thinks is, this guy, who does this guy think he is? But he looks at him and he realizes that he's not quite patrician. His sensor for this genetic caste system is off with this guy. He can't figure out why it's bothering him so much because he cannot immediately place where he belongs. Something that he notices, which is rare, presumably, is this guy has heterochromia. He has 2 different color eyes. So one black, one blue. And he's got 50 other tiny imperfections, which is too many, according to Hadrian, more so than the plebeians or the serfs would have. Or they're so tiny and they're so off just slightly that he doesn't see. It seems something is wrong with this person, according to
he says something is wrong with the priest. Like there's something off. It's not. He's reading him differently than other people that he's interacting with. Yeah.
This isn't, oh, Polino has a little bit of patrician blood in him because he doesn't look as old as he should.
Right.
This is 2 + 2 = 5. Like, why is this adding up
something
this way,
uncanny about him almost is kind of the feeling I'm getting. Yeah. Like you can't identify exactly what's wrong yet.
He steps aside. This chanter is accompanied by people who are wearing emblems of White Horse Company. and they are transporting an empty fugue creche coming up from the prison, and Hadrian like sort of ignores the chantry guy for a second. He asks if they are from White Horse Company, if they worked with Cielcin, buying himself time to sort of survey the situation to figure out what's going on. This chanter guy is not buying it. He's like, you need to go now. Get the F out of here right now. Go. And the White Horse soldier is like ignoring what the chanter is saying and just talking to Hadrian. He's like, oh, that's Sir Alexei Cielcin to you. Meanwhile, Hadrian is looking at this creche and is like, this is way too big for a person. Like a cow could fit in this fugue creche.
Yep.
What's the deal here? And then he puts two and two together. And if you're reading really closely, the end of the chapter where he says it out loud, like I didn't realize until the end of the chapter, but we can assume here, based on what happened in the previous chapter, that a Cielcin is in the bottom of the prison at this point. They have transported a Cielcin, they've put him at the bottom of the prison, and Hadrian realizes that the moment he sees this fugue creche.
So when he starts talking about the creche being far too big for a person, the light bulb immediately went off when I was reading it for this first time, and I was freaking out.
Yeah.
I was like, holy shit, this is gonna happen. I was so pumped and ready to just, because we've heard so much about the Cielcin, but we have literally never seen them on the, like we haven't seen them interact at all. We've never seen them in the moment. We've only heard stories and all of this. So it's just, have never been higher in the book for me until this chapter. And we've got this weird guy bumping into Hadrian, telling him to move out of the way, calling him a slave when he's not a slave. And this weirdness about it. This scene is amazing.
Yeah.
It's so great. I get so hyped with this scene.
It's so good. If you think, I mean, so what we saw with Hadrian and Xenos before, right, is the moment he finds out about the Imad, he goes across town to go and see them. He's like, I'm putting that on the story a little bit, but like the first earliest convenient moment where they don't have to worry about survival, he and Kat are moving towards the Imad and still going there ostensibly to get fish or whatever. Presumably this Cielcin is next door. So
Literally
you think Hadrian's not going to go and see
stairs.
him? Like Hadrian's going to go and meet this Cielcin, right? Like he's gonna at this point. We know that about him. He went across town to meet the Umad. Xenos he's never met before.
He's going to at least try, right?
He's going to try and see the Cielcin that is literally next door to where he sleeps.
Yep.
Hadrian still ignores the chanter that is holding him by the shirt at this point. He's like shaking him almost. And it's as if like somebody's grabbing you by the scruff of your neck and you're just like talking to the guy behind him like, yeah, what's up, dude? Like it's totally ignoring this guy. And tries to talk to the soldiers about joining up with White Horse Company, sort of still trying to get as much information from this moment as he can because he knows that he's about to be, sent away or whatever. He's trying to stall still. At that point, the chanter grabs Hadrian, slams him into the wall, and Hadrian like rears back, hits his head against the back of the wall, and it, stuns him a little bit of like, he hits his head on the back of the wall, blinding lights, that kind of thing. But in this moment, it's not like this is a soldier or this is, he can't do anything to this guy. This guy's chantry. So punching him, fighting him, totally unacceptable and basically a death. These are the torturers and the priests of the empire. They are untouchable. You cannot do anything to them. The chanter turns to the mercenaries and says, stun him. Like he's done dealing with Hadrian at this point. They want him to just stun him. And at that point, Hadrian gets shot. He doesn't even remember what happens, doesn't remember falling. And the next thing he remembers is waking up to his eyes being forced open and a bright light being shined on him. Chanda, who we know from previous chapters, is inspecting him and doing the whole, you just got knocked out check on him. And she's like, yep, it looks like you were stunned. And he's like, yeah, I was stunned. This priest stunned me. Hey, and by the way, there's a Cielcin in the prison right now. And then switch immediately. It's like, Hadrian's the only one excited about the fact that there's a Cielcin nearby.
Yeah.
Like, he's the only one. It'd be like, hey, there's a tiger living next to your room. Doesn't that sound cool? You want to go see it?
Yeah. It's even worse than that. It's like there's like a man-eating like Nazi or something like that, and he's like, I've got to go see it and speak German to it. And you're like,
there's a cannibal Nazi next door.
It's crazy.
Oh my gosh,
it's crazy.
Buffalo Bill is next door. You want to go see him? That's terrible.
Yeah.
Chanda mentions at the fact that Hadrian got shot by the Chantry. He's like, I would not mess with them. It's not worth your time. And Hadrian thinks back, like he's regaining his memories in this moment. And he thinks, like, there's this guy. He was this guy. He's very memorable. Like, I can't get his face out of my head. He's blonde with 2 different colored eyes. And Chanda's like, oh, you mean the guy that's got a face that makes you look like you want to step on it? You know, like one of those guys. And he's like, yeah, that guy. And Chanda's like, oh, that's the Grand Prior's bastard. And Hadrian is like, bastard. He gets confused at the concept of a bastard. We're familiar with it because so many philandering nobles in our timeline, in our history, right? The idea of a bastard is especially confusing to Hadrian because he knows that the Grand Prior is Palatine. And what Hadrian knows about Palatines is that the High College is always involved with having kids. Like, this doesn't happen. Like, bastards don't happen. It just doesn't happen. Any request to have a children, the High College handles it. And basically, this is the way that the emperor controls the Palatine constellation, is because you have to ask him, essentially, if you can have children. But then Hadrian has this realization that this priest in particular is what he calls an intus. This is the first time we're hearing this term, but an intus, according to the lexicon in the book, is a Palatine born outside of the oversight of the High College, usually possessing several physical or psychological defects, a bastard. And the Latin origin of the word intus means within or inside or from within. It's where we get the word intestines. And so how backwards is it that this intus, like the term intus is seen as like, ugh, gross, nasty, when the intus was presumably born what you and I would consider naturally. Yeah. From inside, right? Mm-hmm. This is a total inversion of what is right and what is wrong with these eugenics stuff, right? Yeah. Hadrian has this the moment he sees him, he has a visceral reaction saying, wrong. You are wrong. Something about you is wrong. You are defective, whatever. But this guy came out of his mom. Right. Hadrian didn't. Hadrian was born out of that and is closer to Saltus than he is to this guy. Yeah. I never looked up what intus was until researching for this episode. That's fascinating. That's crazy. That's fascinating. Very well done. Yeah. Very well. He chose that word for a reason. It's genius. Yeah. Chanda hearing him say intus is like, you better not say that near that man. So this is like a very, very, very rude term. It's like, you will get punished severely. You get pilloried for that. His name is Gilliam Vass, and he sits on the Count's council. So not only is he a member of the Chantry, but he's got the Count's ear. And if we know about the people that have the Count's ear, like Eusebia, the prior, they have an extraordinary amount of power. And so this guy's uber powerful and was involved in bringing the Cielcin and putting them downstairs. Hadrian better not bark up the wrong tree. But Hadrian, being the know-it-all that he is like, actually, the indexed punishment would actually be 20 lashes for slander. And the narrator, Hadrian's like, it's actually 15. I don't know why I said 20 in that moment. And then, actually, Hadrian in the moment is also, it's not slander if it's true. He's putting on not understanding, having no wherewithal of the fact that, like, it doesn't matter what's true or what's false. It's the Chantry. Like, you're going to lose this fight. Just putting on his Reddit hat for a moment and just like, totally. Yeah. Gilliam Voss, what a name, right? It's just like, it's, this character has got such a weight to him in this chapter. It immediately captured my attention when he's in here. He's just like very compelling character that crossed paths with Hadrian here. And it's the first time that we're hearing directly of somebody who is part of the Chantry, basically since Eusebia or Severn, right? Mm-hmm. This is a Chantry with a face, not just the Grand Prior or the Chantry, the capital T, capital C Chantry. This is an individual that is going to impact the story in some way. A genius introduction. And of course, right, like, narrator Hadrian wouldn't mention this person if it didn't impact the story in some way. Hadrian asks her if Vass really is an intus, and Chanda's like, yeah, probably. I mean, if you look at him long enough, you can realize that something's messed up in the nucleotides or whatever she says. It's like, yeah, I mean, I could tell that you were a Palatine. Yeah, he's probably an intus just looking at him. This section here, this stuck out to me as well.
on 256. Do you want to read this?
Go for it.
Okay. This section really encapsulates, I think, just the whole vibe of the situation. A petulant cruelty was native born. I can almost pity him now. But the stunner ache and the aching pride made such emotion impossible for me at the time. First of all, this gives me like Hadrian sort of clearly stating on the page that it feels like this is a villain guy. Like this guy is not a good person looking back. But it's interesting is that he's sort of asking this nature nurture question is like, is the genetics what did this to him? Or is the way that this man was treated what turned him into, I mean, he sounds like, the way he's described here, he sounds like he's a monster or something. Because Hadrian in old age can't move past this guy being a bad person. So it's an interesting question about this, right? It actually, when I was reading it, it was interesting to me is like, it seems sort of straightforward that there's something virtuous about beauty, right? It sort of follows this interesting question that follows is it a negative for something not to be beautiful? And that I think is a way less straightforward question. You know, if we have like a person who like seems really attractive or is in really good shape or something, it seems there's some virtue in that. But someone like Gilliam, who's born this way literally through no fault of his own, can it really be the case that there's something ethically wrong with that? Or does that speak to the soul of the person or something? Or are we creating a self-fulfilling prophecy by thinking that way about people and sort of twisting them through our treatment of them? It's a really fascinating question, and I think it's probably worth hearkening back to, you know, if Gilliam comes up later in the story, and it sounds like you will with the way that Hadrian's talking about him. It's like, why is this person this way? Is sort of the question that leaps off the page with this. And I actually don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah, he will be an interesting case study for nature versus nurture in upbringing or comportment, right? Like the way he presents himself.
Yeah, and the pity
right now
thing,
it looks like he's a bad guy, right? For
the
sure.
pity thing is interesting too, because it's like if it were the case that he were twisted and made bad because of his treatment, is it still Gilliam's fault? Because even if he's treated badly, should he still have the moral obligation to rise above that? Should he still be better than to become this version of himself because people treated him poorly? Because it sounds like Hadrian, even in his old age, struggles to move past who Gilliam is or who Gilliam was. So
but we know Hadrian isn't objective, right? Like he's not objective because of his personal experience with this person.
Right.
But even still, like the almost pity him makes me think that had they not had negative experiences, maybe Hadrian would view him differently.
Right.
Him personally, right? But to your point, the almost also does mean, no, there's still a higher threshold of morality that you have to meet that this guy does not.
Yeah. Yeah. It'll be interesting,
at least in his eyes,
as we move forward, like why the condemnation. Because all we have thus far is him. He stuns Hadrian for not leaving, which is like, you know, not great, but this seems really bad. So it'll be interesting to see what's really bad.
I want to go back to your question about beauty, because this really got me thinking. Is there virtue in something not being beautiful? There's the concept of ugly, delicious food, right? Like beauty in some respects is symmetry.
Yeah.
So we ascribe beauty to things that we view as humans as symmetrical. And that's why this person looks wrong from Hadrian's perspective of the perfect symmetry that should be out of a person, or even the imperfect symmetry of Mother Nature should still be there, right? Like, or the asymmetry. The reason that Vast looks wrong to Hadrian is because he's not perfect, like a Palatine, which would have the perfect symmetry to the nanometer, right? And he's not asymmetrical like you would expect a plebeian to be. He's somewhere in the middle where it's not right. Like he should fit in one of these two categories. He's either closer to this end or like patrician, or he's here, and Vast is somewhere in here.
Yeah.
And so for him, it's off-putting or offsetting and wrong. I think for us as people, like the people that we describe as the most beautiful are symmetrical. I think you can't ascribe moral value to a person being beautiful. And Hadrian does that too much, right? He judges every book by its cover instantly and then automatically puts them in this different category. That's a huge flaw in our protagonist at this point in the story, right?
Yeah.
And I'm surprised that the guy who earlier in the story was bemoaning the idea that it is more human to be plebeian than it is to be palatine, that he puts this guy totally on the bottom end of the untouchable spectrum in comparison to the plebeians, despite the fact that he was born in a more natural way.
Yeah.
See, it's incongruous with who we know the narrator Hadrian to be at this point.
Yeah. I also think it screams out the sort of inherent evil of this system that our natural human process that is probably the most beautiful thing we do creates this mutation, right? Something has happened with the Palantine class that makes it there's something about our humanity that's damaged here.
Curdling in the blood, I think you mentioned
something's deeply wrong, and we're seeing that here sort of on display with both the appearance but also moral character of this person. Sort of unclear which direction it comes from, but it is on display here.
Moving on from that, Hadrian is now thinking about, like, his mind is moving off of Gilliam Vass and moving towards the Cielcin that he knows is in the prison. And Switch can tell just by looking at him, he's about to do something reckless, right?
He's about to pull a Hadrian.
Switch knows him well enough to be able to, like, pull that out of him. And then at the end of the chapter, Rocchio lets the reader in, the first-time reader in, or the reader that isn't reading too terribly closely in, confirming the suspicion that there is a Cielcin in the Colosseum dungeon. There's a Cielcin right next door to Hadrian. What is he going to do about it?
Yep.
And that's where we end chapter 38. And we begin chapter 39, A Kingdom for a Horse. So Hadrian and Switch are down by the shipyard, the space shipyard, and are window shopping for a ship potentially. And again, on a first read through, I never caught this again. Hadrian is talking to the woman that he had negotiated his retreat from when he went to look for the Eurynoceer earlier.
Yes.
So the scrap woman that was leading that scrapping crew who were like picking the bones off of the Eurynoceer is the woman that he, as a myrmidon in this moment, is dealing with, or a fake palatine.
Where he recovered his ring earlier in the story.
Yeah. Where he got the ring.
Yeah.
It's the same woman he's talking to. She doesn't remember him at all. Presumably it's because he looks totally different. And not only that, Hadrian, although not dressed and adorned as a palatine necessarily would be, he's wearing the closest thing he has to his Sunday best, trying to, raise his he doesn't have palatine level clothes, but he's got a nice suit that he's wearing or something like that. They're looking at a ship that is all squares and all 90-degree angles and rusted and ugly and very industrial is the picture that we get here. Sort of think of the Scion XB of spaceships.
It's like a freighter or something like that. It's like, it's a cargo ship or something.
But it's a ship.
Yeah, it is a ship.
This ship is from Andun, which is a star system known for its ship manufacture from the worlds in the back of the book. Although Gila mentions that Andun no longer makes ships. They've been put out of business by Ilium and Monmara, which are Norman shipyards. So the Normans, we know, there's the Norma arm of the galaxy. The Normans and the Empire have had battles before, so there's still some tension there, but they have companies and they manufacture starships, and apparently the type of starships that they make are cheaper and faster. The term they use in the book is fucking Normans, Switch says, sounding disgusting. And then Gila responds, fucking Normans, build cheap, build fast, but only empires built to last. Hadrian said this is probably like a sailor's meme. So memes exist. 15,000 years from now, memes still exist, guys.
How did I miss that? That's hilarious.
Yeah.
I didn't think. Wait a minute. It's just wait a second.
It must have been some manner of joke, a sailor's meme, perhaps. For Gila spat, fucking Normans, build cheap, build fast, but only empires built to last. She said this like it was some kind of slogan, but I didn't know it. Switch was nodding, and the two of them went on in this vein for a moment. I was glad I brought the other myrmidon, though it had taken some convincing. Is it different in your version?
In my book, it says, she said this like it was some kind of slogan, but I didn't know it. So he added that is a deliberate addition to the special edition. The special edition of Empire of, and the updated lore to Empire of Silence. Thank you, Rocchio.
Important. Ilium is just an ancient name for the city of Troy. Presumably, these ships that the Normans make are less reliable, according to this sailor's meme or whatever. But theoretically, that would be the more affordable option for Hadrian and for Switch and for Polino. And although their plan has not come to fruition yet, at this point, they're not done with their combat engagements. They still have some money that they need to make. They are starting to look and starting to plan, mainly because Hadrian is incapable of sitting still. Now that he has a direction, he's itching to like get to the next step, figure out his plan, partially because he wants to have a parachute in the event that he needs to jump out. The Inquisition could still potentially find him, and until he has a way that he can leave a planet at a moment's notice, he doesn't have a means of escape at this time. Switch, looking at the ship, says, like, this thing is old. Look at the fugue crashes here. These things are ancient. And he's worried that, like, if he goes in, he'll come out an old man because they won't work the same. And we get some, like, something I noticed on this read through, and that I'm getting so far with this read through is, I'm getting more from Switch than I had initially thought I had it up to this point.
Yep. I
didn't realize that Switch has spent basically his whole life on starships. I thought he was just around I don't know, but like a brothel or something like that. No, Switch is in fugue crushes in the service of Palatine lords and ladies for an extended period of time.
Mm-hmm.
So he's actually the perfect person that Hadrian could have brought.
It's very smart that Hadrian brought up. I agree. That stuck out to me more this time around than my first time. I don't know why I didn't catch it, but again, I think frankly I was reading too fast and catching more this time around.
So it's not just the fact that like Switch is a lost puppy in this moment. Switch is actively able to determine what is good and what is bad on a starship, having lived only on them his whole life. So Switch and Gila are arguing over something about the ship, sort of haggling the price down, that kind of thing. And Hadrian sees another ship that looks elegant like a sword. He mentions that maybe these were made in the same place as the other one, but like this ship looks totally different than the boxy mess that they're like this industrial cargo ship that they were looking at before.
I think it's fascinating. He keeps using fantasy terms to describe science fiction ships.
Yeah.
He did this earlier in the book with
one genre.
Yeah, it's interesting to me. It's like a sword. It's like a dragon. He keeps doing it. Yeah.
But this ship is one large wing that you can sort of envision that is like uses repulsors rather than like rather than jets in the back or whatever. It's got repulsors around it that lift it off of the ground, push it off the ground. But the ship is totally different than the ship they have. And he asks Gila about it and finds out that it's called the Uron, which we'll talk about in just a moment. But this ship, in comparison to the other one, this is like double, triple, quadruple the price of the ship that they were just looking at. And it's not a cargo ship. Like, this is a smaller ship.
Yeah.
It's more elegant. It's technically not on the market, but it'll cost you 3.2 million marks. So we know that the math that we're looking at here to get this small, like elegant kind of looking ship is totally off. Like, there's no way between the four of them they can't even come close to having enough money.
I think he says like not even literally in like 100 lifetimes could they get the money for it. Like the math is impossible.
They can't even put a down payment down for a loan.
Yeah.
They're so far off monetarily. He does mention that this ship, the Uron, is similar to a ship that he gets later called the Ascalon after the Battle of Metna. The Ascalon will come up a lot in the future, and I never knew. Like, in your version, does it mention the fact that the Ascalon shows up?
Wait a second.
Because this might be a retconning thing. On 260, around the middle of the page, she had no wings, for her whole body was a large one, lifted not by fusion burners, but by Royce repulsors, silent as space itself. I would not see her like again for many years, not until we acquired the Ascalon after the Battle of Metina.
The only thing I see is lifted not by fusion burners, but by Royce repulsors, silent as space itself. Hadrian, I'm sorry, and it just moves on to the conversation.
So this is a continuity fix. So he does get a ship like and the continuity fix is keying us into later. Hadrian will get a ship called the Ascalon that is very similar to the ship that he sees here. It also kind of keys us in that maybe he doesn't get this one. He doesn't really get this one. Yeah, I would not see her like again for many years.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, that's an addition.
Yeah, that's good to know, because I thought I missed it on my first read through.
You didn't.
I did.
It wasn't there.
It was not there. Ascalon, the name, is an ancient Near Eastern port city located in what is now modern-day Israel. It was a highly contested area during the Crusades, and it is one of the Philistine settlements that is mentioned in the Bible. Uran, which is the name of the ship that he's actually looking at right now, could be coming from the Hindi, meaning to pay off a debt or to fulfill an obligation. It could also be Hauran, which is a region in southern Syria or northern Jordan. So maybe one of those two things, maybe neither. But regardless, Hadrian does not have enough money. But despite the fact that he doesn't have enough money, he's still going to play like he does to Gila. So he asks her, well, what if would y'all accept a loan from the Ratsbank or installments from the Mandari, like from in a Mandari account? He knows that he can't afford to do that, but he has to observe these forms as sort of a dance to move further along in the process. Gila says, yeah, that's normally what people do. I've only seen one person pay in cash, a Lothrian, which is interesting. Like the only time it's ever paid in cash is the Lothrian in this situation.
This is a weird and far-fetched. Wasn't Old Crow a Lothrian smuggler?
He smuggled to the Lothrian. They didn't know. It might be a reference to Old Crow.
It's obscure. I don't know if it would be, but it's
he's
interesting.
Going to the Commonwealth.
Yeah.
Crow's direction was to the Commonwealth.
Yeah.
He was going to smuggle there.
Okay, maybe. Yeah. He just popped him. I was looking for Old Crow like a paranoid maniac after there was another reference to him. It's just, it's interesting. Lothriad's mentioned again, and Switch is growing uncomfortable with this conversation as they start to discuss figures and stuff like that, because I think Switch is like, hey, bro, if we get to the point of this part of the conversation, we have no money.
Yeah.
There's nothing to actually do.
Yeah, he's like, cut it off, dude. Cut it off. It's like the universal signal for stop talking right now, please.
Yes.
Is happening behind Gila. And then Hadrian pulls out the phrase, what about a trade? And he sort of pulls the ring out, and he is essentially offering his title to 26,000 hectares of land on Delos as a trade for this ship. Just for reference, for people who don't know what a hectare is, I had to look it up. That's 65,000 acres of land. That is 101 square miles of land that he has the title of. Even if they were to trade that one for one, it's totally an unfair trade. The land itself would be worth the price of both of the ships that they're looking at together and still wouldn't be enough to be equal today. Gila obviously initially doesn't believe him. This guy doesn't look like a Palatine to her. Behind Gila, Switch is in shock because it's the first time that he is finding out that Hadrian is a Palatine. So up to this point, Hadrian has not mentioned at all his parentage to Switch. Gila reaches up to touch the ring to try and inspect it. And of course, Hadrian the Palatine slaps her hand away. And then he asks, like, can you even make this trade? Are you authorized to make this trade? Because if not, I should go get the logothete pluripotentis, which is a logothete who is responsible specifically for overseeing the transfer of lands and other titled goods between patricians and the Palatine class. What he's actually doing here is threatening to take some of her margin. So the logothete pluripotentis is kind of like a realtor, right? They get paid out of the seller's funds. So what he's arguing here is, I'm going to cut into your margins. If not, do I need to go do this like right now? Because if you can't do it, then I'm going to go get this guy and you're going to lose out.
Yeah.
He's playing a game of, you're losing out on some money by potentially messing with me here. Apparently this practice of using this logothete pluripotentis also cuts down on people scamming Palatines historically.
Yeah.
Which is why they do it. The fact that he's even bringing this up, Gila is like, okay, this guy's Palatine. She also recognizes, hey, I can't make this kind of transaction personally, but the county might be able to do it. Who I work for, they might be able to do it. I just need more time, things like that. And Hadrian's like, great, you're going to hold this ship for me. It'll be great. To the Uran, right? This winged ship that he really likes. She's like, kinda. It's not on the market yet. We're still repairing it. It's not flyable, so we're not really selling it yet. He's like, great, you're holding it for me. It's like, okay, all right. He mentions to Switch in the moment, lying, that he got the land when his brother was inherited into what we now know, the role of Archon, which is a lie. He had these assets before. And not only that, Alistair probably has frozen his assets at this point. But because, despite the fact that that may have occurred, the ring doesn't know that. It will still recognize him as a member of the house, and legally, any promise that he makes on behalf of House Marlowe is legally binding. Now, if he were to just say, here, 26,000 hectares of land, figure it out, here's the sign, click, signs with the ring, he will have enough time to escape because they're going to give him the keys to the car. They're not going to be like, all right, now we have to wait to confirm, X amount of days, months, years for you to figure that out. That there's an understanding that with the Palatine class and this process that you don't keep the guy waiting. The particulars are going to be figured out by lower people later.
Yeah.
He would then have enough time to escape. And this is sort of his revenge against Keela, against the county, and against his dad to some extent, because he's making all of them work way harder than they need to. Meanwhile, he has just purchased a ship from the people that robbed him with the money that he doesn't own from his father, who is a bastard. And meanwhile, he presumably would be light years away by this point.
Yep.
Unfortunately for Hadrian, this never happens. And that's just the way that he ends the chapter. He says, as revenges go, it would have been perfect had it ever played out. I love the last lines of these chapters.
Yeah, they're great. Awesome. They're so fun. It's just the drama is just dripping with it. It's hilarious. And then we have the last chapter, which is kind of a banger in my opinion, a monopoly on suffering. And I want to say at the outset here, rereading this chapter, I was really impressed actually with Rocchio's understanding of like human interaction, hurt, and arguments and emotions and stuff. It really kind of caught me off guard. I don't know why I had sort of zipped past this on a first read, but on a slow read while taking notes, I really digested it a lot more. And Switch is furious. It's like out the gate. Switch is so angry that Hadrian is Palatine. Not just that he's Palatine, but he also didn't tell him that he was Palatine. And the argument launches into, it's a brief chapter, but it's very, very important. Switch quickly moves from Hadrian being his friend to Hadrian being one of them. He says it over and over throughout this argument is, you're one of these people, and Hadrian gets sort of put in this spot as basically type of person that has abused me throughout my entire life, despite the fact that they have history together. Hadrian sort of pleads with him, is trying to describe like, I couldn't tell you, you don't understand. Also, I'm not like them. I'm not this kind of a person. And they end up in like a very much heated talking past each other argument. They are misunderstanding each other, and Hadrian's getting increasingly frustrated by the fact that Switch continuously mischaracterizes Hadrian. So that there's a true thing, and then there's a mischaracterization. True thing is Hadrian lied. Hadrian was not honest with Switch. True thing, reasonable to be upset about. The second thing Switch is doing is making an assumption that Hadrian is like all of the other Palatine. Hadrian is not perfect, but for all of his imperfection, he is not like all of the other Palatine. So there's...
And specifically does not share the same sexual ethic that the rest of the Palatine class does, which is the abuse that Switch has suffered.
Correct.
By the Palatines, right?
Yes. And so the accusations continue to fly, and Hadrian's feeling continually, not just like, you're mischaracterizing me, but you're also saying that I can just up and leave this scenario. Switch starts accusing Hadrian of like, what are you doing here? Just leave. Just go buy things. You don't need the money for any of this thing. You can buy whatever you want. Are you just pretending and like jacking around with us in Colosso because you want to pretend to be a regular person? Like, accusations, making assumptions about Hadrian's circumstance and abilities and resources throughout the entire situation. And all of this culminates in, Hadrian having his typical rageful moment of telling Switch, he was like, I'm not like one of these people that like groped you up and down. You don't have a monopoly on suffering. And he crosses a line, right? He says something that he should never have said. And I think it's very clear that right after saying it, as a lot of us do in arguments, we say that like something we don't really mean. We're just trying to hurt the other person. Is he immediately feels ashamed and gradually starts to realize that he's beginning to do exactly what he is accusing Switch of. He's also doing a true thing and a false thing, right? Like Switch has got this lied to me, which is true, but making assumptions. And then Hadrian is now like,
those assumptions being that like Hadrian, the reason that Hadrian is here is because of a mistreatment of somebody like Switch.
right.
Specifically.
Mm-hmm.
Right. What did you do? Beat up one of your father's concubines when you couldn't get it up? And we know that Hadrian kisses somebody unconsensually and is mortified about it years later.
Yeah.
So this is not the Hadrian that we go for. This is the talking past each other, like you were saying. But Hadrian sort of flips it back on him. It's like, I'm not playing with you. Like, if I was playing with you, why would I? Basically, he's saying, I've saved you like 100 times already in this fight. You would not be here without me. Like, I haven't asked you to be my servant. I haven't asked for favors monetarily, sexually, otherwise. Like, I'm the man that saved you. I've been in there with you. If there's something true, take that.
Yeah. Yeah. And putting my work hat on, right? Putting my therapist hat on, because we're looking at an argument right now. What we're seeing here is a couple of things. Number one, Switch is making assumptions. He's kind of mind reading a little bit. He's assuming he knows more about Hadrian than he does. And Hadrian is being defensive. Okay. The problem here is that, so a lot of the arguments tend to escalate when we're talking past each other because we're having two separate conversations, right? Switch is saying, you lied to me and you're this thing that you're not. And then Hadrian is saying, I had good reasons to lie and no, I'm not like that. And we're talking past each other. Hadrian could literally just say, yeah, I lied. I should not have done that to you. And that was wrong. And also, here's this other part of this thing. You cannot do this thing where you just say I had a good reason for it and just continually excuse. And then people, when they're hurt, don't want to hear your explanation for why you did what you did, because it just sounds like you're justifying it over and over again, or being defensive. And then after Hadrian acknowledges the fault for lying and the fact that he's hurt Switch, they would have to have a discussion about the fact that Switch is making assumptions that are inaccurate, right? But you have to do them sequentially or one at a time, or there's no conversation to be had. This drives a huge wedge between Hadrian and Switch. And it's like the first time that we've had, this is like sort of like a miniature sort of arc that we're having here where Hadrian has gained friendship and is now like on the line because of his lack of truth telling. We had this idea in the last arc about whether or not Hadrian would be real with Cat, right? And Hadrian decided to be open with Cat. And that relationship went well. He tells her.
But we never get the details of that conversation.
We don't. We just know that he tells her because he's told her.
So
about...
is Hadrian glossing over a bad conversation that he had with Cat?
Interesting. I don't know. That's it.
We don't see it on the page. Presumably, we don't know if that went well or not. It didn't go poorly enough to where they didn't speak and they were still friends and lovers and whatever.
Yeah.
Cat is different than Switch.
Yes.
Cat presumably doesn't have as much experience with palatines specifically abusing him.
Yes.
Or her.
Yeah.
In that case.
And I will say, Hadrian really crossed a line here by, because there's a nerve that is pushed on with Switch about, just his abuse. The abuse. It's very difficult in a situation.
He makes light of the abuse that has made Switch into the person that he is.
Yeah. And so,
which is a true thing. Like, this is a true thing that's happened. And Hadrian is throwing it back at him as if it is like, pitiful. Or not pitiful. He is underplaying the abuse. He does not know what the situation is like.
I think that the worst of it is that he's using the abuse as a point to defend himself with, right? He's rather than trying to own up to his mistake, he's throwing something into his face. I'm not like those people that did X, Y, Z, or what he did not have to make the point he was trying to make by throwing that in Switch's face.
Mm-hmm.
Very important. And we've seen this a couple of times now. Hadrian has a bit of a temper, and in fairness, it's, Hadrian talks about, like, listen, I've lost people. Like, I have almost been killed. I've been stabbed. He says nearly raped in the book.
That changed actually in this version.
Tell me about it. Yeah.
So I'll read that piece. You're not the only person who ever suffered. More than 3 years I lived in the streets. I slept in gutters, on rooftops. I've been beaten, stabbed. I survived the damn rot. I buried my what? My lover, my friend. I lost people in this city. Just because some perfumed merchanter buggered you up and down the spaceways doesn't give you a monopoly on suffering. So he removed the rape piece from that statement, at least in the other version of the book, right? Because does it say nearly raped in that?
I've lost the people in this city. Yes, I've been beaten, stabbed, nearly raped. I survived the damn rob. Yeah.
He removes the nearly raped in this version of the book.
Interesting. Maybe he's a less angsty author. Or, it's interesting. I'd be curious to know why that was initially in there and decided to get rid of it.
Maybe there was a part of the book that was cut and then that line was never
edited. or theoretically too, maybe if something like that happened in universe, Hadrian didn't want to write about it.
Could be.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's interesting that he decided to remove that. Maybe he thought it was too much.
Yeah.
Yeah. But commentary aside of like writing decisions, Hadrian is hurt because in truth, Hadrian has suffered, right? It's not the same. It's not to the same degree as maybe somebody else who isn't a Palantine would, but he still suffered. That's real. Like he still had a very real human experience of loss. All these things, and it isn't true to say that Hadrian hasn't had those things or he could just walk out or it's that straightforward. It also isn't the same experience to be Hadrian versus to be Switch in this position, because Hadrian is literally not trapped in the same way as the other people, right? He has more plays that he can make. He has the ring so he could do this weird stuff with the ship. So there's a sense in which being in Switch's position, you could still feel like, listen, dude, like this is not quite the same. So you can't say it's the same experience, although it's still inaccurate for Switch to say that he's not suffered at all or something like that. So really just interesting, real kind of argument I could see actually happening between two people, but we're sort of left with Switch leaving and they don't recover from this conflict in this chapter. And so we're left with sort of a cliffhanger about what will happen with this formed friendship in this conflict state.
Are we seeing a pattern emerge with Hadrian here where winning and at any cost is more important? Like when his emotions get inflamed, it's I'm going to hit you hard and I'm going to hit you fast. Like rage is kind of blindness in this situation here too, right? We don't see that on the page.
But it's here.
This is the emotional version of hitting Crispin in the head with the book, right?
Yep.
Kind of. So are we seeing a pattern emerge of Hadrian when his pride or ego gets bruised or when his wrath gets inflamed that he just goes for the kill every time?
He's got a temper. We can at least draw that conclusion. This is a pattern of behavior. He's got a temper.
Yeah.
He doesn't handle serious conflict very well. I also think it's worth noting that the defensiveness, he really does not want to be associated with the other Palantine. He takes deep offense to it and frankly doesn't want to hear it. And I'll be curious to see if that pattern continues where he just doesn't want to be amongst them as the story goes on. He felt othered early in the story, and Switch associating him with those people, especially as surrounding sexual ethic, infuriated him. It'll be interesting to see if Hadrian and Switch recover. In this section, you really kind of grow to like the both of them together as friends.
Yeah, he also mentions that this anger, these words, this part of him, he wishes that he could say it was his mother or it's his father's voice or Crispin's voice or his Uncle Lucian's even or whatever. He says, no, the shame really comes with the fact that narrator Hadrian recognizes that this was Hadrian saying this, not any of them, not him using his father's tone or anything like this. Is a uniquely Hadrian thing that caused this pain and suffering for Switch.
Because this is very unlike his dad and like Crispin. They don't have this hot, uncontrolled anger. They have anger, but it's not this.
Crispin kind of does, but Alistair's threshold for that is way higher.
Yeah,
and when it erupts, everybody gets taken in it, and there's no winning.
Yeah, and in fairness to Crispin, I mean, like, only when hit does that come out of him. Words wouldn't take him there.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
And Hadrian has been taken there by words multiple times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sensitive. Yeah. Does not like losing rhetorically or physically for that matter.
Yeah.
Switch ends up punching him in the face and bloodies him up. And then, like you mentioned, it's sort of like, I'm not accepting any apologies, and then heads out. And so we don't get any resolution. We are left with Hadrian sitting at the back wall of this shop bleeding.
Yep.
And
I will say another point of realism, a lot of bad fights don't resolve during the fight. They resolve
100%.
later after people have cooled off. You end fights before they get to this point because this is a losing situation. And
yeah, 100%.
You don't attempt to resolve it. And if you're getting to the point where you're going to even become close to saying something like this or close to coming up blows, that you've already made like 7 mistakes before it's happened. So it'll be interesting to see if they recover. I'm hoping for them.
You're 100% right that they should have left it way earlier.
Yeah.
This resonates so much. As somebody who's married.
Yep.
And who's had fights, it's just you always can leave before. Hindsight's always 20/20, but like you can always leave.
Yep.
That's a fair point.
There's research about this. There's a great research duo, John and Julie Gottman, that are relationship kind of experts, and they ran an experiment where they put electrodes and sensors on people that pick up physiological data and stuff, and they would tell married couples to like have a discussion about something that gets y'all heated, basically fabricating an argument. Several minutes into the argument, after people start getting heated, they would go in, they would pause. Hey, our sensors stopped working. Can you pause for a minute? We need you to take some time while we get our stuff set back up. We'll come back in. You continue once we got our sensors set back up. They come back in after 10, 15 minutes. Okay, we're good. Sensors are good. Continue the discussion. And what they did is first of all, they're lying. The sensors were fine the whole time. They were just fabricating a fake break. And they found that the discussions that had the pause ended up much more successful in terms of resolving the issues just by faking a break and allowing people's physiological symptoms to drop. We just are not good versions of ourselves when we're like this, when we're like switching Hadrian in the situation, and we're better off pausing and letting the good version of ourselves come back to have the discussion.
As will we. Pause right now at the end of this chapter and let the good versions of ourselves come back next week, because we continue always forward
and always down.
And we will see you next time.
See you, folks.
Devil's Rest Book Club is Cameron Elston and Drew Welty. Today's episode discussed chapters 37, 38, 39, and 40 of Empire of Silence by Christopher Rocchio. Copyright 2018. Empire of Silence was originally published by Daw Books on July 3rd, 2018. Quality editing and original music by Cameron Elston. Find us on YouTube. Contact us at devilsrestbookclub@gmail.com. Devil's Rest Book Club is a production of Disquiet Pods. This episode, copyright 2026, Cameron Elston and Drew Welty. Thanks for joining us, and remember, rage is blindness.